Pelicans cover. Welcome into the Elias game plan. We're getting you ready for NBA playoff action. We've got over a month worth of great basketball to be had before the NBA crowns a champion. But before we do, there's still 2 more games to be played to decide who will be the 8th seed in the East and the West, and that's what we're here to break down for you. We've got Jimmy Wright, we've got Kevin Hines, both from Elias. They've got some great Elias insights that they're going to tee up for us, get us ready for these 2 games on Friday. But first and foremost, Jimmy, let's go back before we go forward, kind of break us down, like give us a little recap as to how we got here and why these 4 teams are going to be facing one another.
Yeah, so the play-in's gone chalk so far. The Nets were the number 7. They matched up against the Cavs as the 8th. The Nets won that game. In the 9-10 game, the Hawks defeated the Hornets. So as the play-in tournament works, then the Cavaliers get a second bite. They got to take on the Hawks. That's going to be for the 8th and final spot in the East. Pretty much the same deal out in the West. The Clippers were the 8th. They lost to the Timberwolves as the number 7 seed. So again, they're gonna get one more chance to make the playoffs. They take on the winner of the 9-10, which was the Pelicans defeating the Spurs. So Pelicans two wins to get in. They got one more shot and to grab that 8th spot in the West.
I really like this format, to be quite frank. I know it's kind of 50-50 split, but I'm enjoying it. Yeah, all right, so I think it is. All right, so let's talk about the first game that's on tap. And that's Atlanta going up against the Cavs. Atlanta's favored by 2.5. The over-under's at 225, a pretty high total. Jimmy, let's start with you. Give us those Elias insights to get us ready for this game.
Yeah, so looking at it from Atlanta's side, I think they have pretty good reason to feel confident. Despite being a 9, and traditionally they wouldn't be playing after the regular season, but they went 15-9 after the break. So they've been much better lately. And they also should feel pretty good about this matchup. They've played the Cavaliers 4 times. They beat them 3, each of the last 3, the most recent games. And they put up 120 points in those 3 wins. So, Anita, like you said, a high over-under is definitely something to keep your eye on. And one of the reasons is going to be Trae Young. When you talk about the NBA, for me, especially in the playoffs, it's who's your star and can he beat the other team's star, right? And I think Atlanta's got to feel good about Trae Young. We all saw what he did last year, taking that team to the Eastern Conference Finals. He had a really good game against the Hornets the other night. He ended up with 11 assists. He scored 24 points, in the playoffs against the Cavaliers this season, he averaged over 30. So we know Trae Young is going to get his points. Darius Garland's been very good for Cleveland, but he's never played in the playoffs. We've seen Trae Young on that big stage. We know what New York fans were saying about him, and we saw how much he soaked it up. So if I'm Atlanta, I feel pretty good about where we are right now.
Yeah, I mean, unlike the Hawks, the Cavaliers have been struggling since the All-Star break, going only 9-15 and only going 3-9 over the last 12 games. So naturally, the Hawks are favored in this game. Being a home underdog is not something that's really happened in the play-in games. This is the first time actually that the road team is the favorite. Now, as far as a home underdog, the Cavaliers not doing so well this year as a home underdog, 4-11 straight up, but they have been covering with a 9-5-1 against the spread record this season. But at a spread of 2.5 points, you're pretty much going to have to hope that the Cavaliers wins. It's not a lot of points to get.
Hawks 8-9 as a road favorite against the spread, so nothing stellar there.
Right, exactly. Now, the Cavs, though, despite their struggles, they got off to a really hot start this year. Not expected. They were a 22-50 team last season. So they've really rebounded to have a great season this year by everybody's standards, winning 44 games. You could attribute that to the emergence of Darius Garland, who's really emerged as a star player for them, 6th in the league in assists. They drafted Evan Mobley, who's a Rookie of the Year candidate. So they've really come together as a team. They actually went through a stretch in the middle of the season where they were a betting darling, covering in 14 straight games. So if you were riding the Cleveland bandwagon there for a while, you probably made some good money. And then as recently as February 11th, they were tied for first place with Chicago. So this was a a team up until the end of the season that had been playing pretty well. But really, the key to the game against Atlanta is that Cleveland has to play better defense. They were the top defensive team all season until Jared Allen fractured his finger in early March. And at that point, they were only allowing 103.2 points per game, but they've really been struggling defensively lately, allowing 114.4 points a game. And that's really been what has led to their struggles is their defense. And that's really, really what they're going to need to do to win this game. Now, they're not going to stop Trae Young, but they can still try to contain him. I mean, he had the other night in their win, Young was only 8 for 24, but he had 11 assists. And even if he has an off shooting night, his ability to create scoring opportunities for other players is his strength. So really what the Cavaliers need to do is two things really to prevent Trae Young from really hurting them. Is the other night the Hawks the Hawks scored 54 points in the paint. And a lot of that was due to the lack of defense by Charlotte, but they really need to stop Atlanta from scoring easy buckets. They also need to contest the 3-point shots. The Hawks are one of the better three-point shooting teams in the NBA. And they went 16 of 32 against Charlotte. So really for Cleveland to have some defensive success, they're going to have to contest the three and cut down on those points in the paint.
Yeah, the problem I think that Cleveland's going to face is that even if they do stop Trae Young, Atlanta's got a lot of scoring depth. We saw 6 guys scored in double digits for them against the Hornets. Clint Capella's been a double-double machine. Hunter had 22 for them. A couple weeks ago, these teams matched up, and Kevin Huerter lit them up for 5 threes on 6 tries. I think even if Trae Young and Garland sort of X each other out in this game, that Cleveland defense has just been porous lately. And I think that there's just too much depth. Bogdanovich has hit 3 threes at least in his last 5 games. Second in the NBA 3-point shooting. Is there anybody in the middle of Cleveland's D now that Allen's hurt that can stop Capella? I think there's just too much firepower for Atlanta.
Guys, I think you've hit on a number of the key points, and probably the biggest for me is Jared Allen, and the fact that I don't anticipate him to play. Who knows? I mean, it's kind of wild right now, right? There's reports out of Brooklyn that Ben Simmons is going to play. There's There's reports all over the place that Steph Curry is going to come. So
Zion was dunking last night.
Exactly. Zion going to play. We don't know. It's going to be a different animal here in the postseason. But Jared Allen doesn't play. I mean, Kevin, you hit the nail on the head, right? Their defense has just been god awful. They've only won 9 games since the All-Star break, and a big reason is because he's been out. And they're not a good 3-point shooting team. And I think this is where the mismatch comes, right? This is a Hawks team. I think they're peaking at the right time. They were averaging 133 points a game since March. They're 8-2 straight up, as well as against the spread. Their last 10 games. Their last game against the Cavs, as you guys pointed out, they won by 20 points. They had 8 players in double digits. Young had 24 points, and Capella had 17 rebounds. You guys talk about, in the paint defense. You got dudes walking away with 17 rebounds. I mean, come on.
And they don't even have John Collins. He's been out. I mean, if they had him too.
Exactly. So I'm leaning towards Atlanta here, guys. I think Atlanta wins this matchup. And a really fun prop bet that's out there, just FYI, is you could bet that Young is going to have more points than Garland. And the way that they're shooting threes, and Young's kind of in a groove. And let me tell you something. I saw him at the Garden last year against the Knicks. He gets in a different gear. Okay, he gets in a different gear in the postseason. I think he's going to ball out.
Yeah, and you don't want to say Garland won't, but we don't know. But we know Trae Young can.
I want to let our listeners and our viewers know that the Elias Game Plan app is going to be with you throughout the entire NBA postseason, okay? And you can download the Elias Game Plan app on your phone. You'll have access to team and player stats, plus head-to-head team comparisons, like I just showed, like I just brought up for you, Young going up against Garland. and, of course, more Elias insights. So the app is going to be incredibly helpful as we head into the NBA postseason. So whether you're betting on the game or you just want to be fully informed, what you need to do is you need to download, as I like to call it, #RunDon'tWalk. You need to go download that app right away. All right, gentlemen, let's talk about the second game, and that's the Pelicans going up against the Clippers. The Pelicans are on the road, obviously heading to LA. The Clippers are favored by 4. The over-under here, lower than before, 216.5. Winner of this now becomes the 8th seed in the West. Jimmy, let's go back to you. Give us those Elias insights on this matchup.
Yeah, New Orleans might just feel lucky to be here. If you think back to the start of the season, 1-12 to kick things off. We mentioned Zion. We haven't seen him. He hasn't played all season yet. And here they are, right? And they turned it around after the All-Star break as well. They went 13-10. If you look at just from the All-Star break after, 11th in the NBA in points scored, 11th in points given up. So they've tightened up on both offense and defense. Obviously, one big trigger on the offensive side has been the trade for CJ McCollum. He's been unbelievable since they got him. He's averaged 24 points, almost 6 assists. He's played 26 games for the team. He's led them in scoring 16 of those 26. Got 8 games where he's hit at least 30 points. You pair him with a guy like Brandon Ingram. That's 2 really dangerous scorers. And to my original point, I don't want to say he's better than Paul George, but man, CJ McCollum has really leveled that offense up.
Yeah. Now, even though the Clippers have gone 1-3 against the Pelicans this season, the last meeting just back in on April 3rd, not that long ago in LA, the Clippers won in convincing fashion by almost 20 points. So now the Clippers, around a 4-point favorite since they're at home, they've actually won 9 of their last 10 games as a home favorite, going 7-3 against the spread. And a lot of this can be attributed to the fact that they got Paul George back, and that's been a huge boost to that team. They've already been without Kawhi Leonard this season. And so getting Paul George back really, I think, increased the confidence in this team. They closed out the regular season with 5 straight wins, going 4-1 against the spread. They've won 5 straight at home. And just to show the importance of George to this team this season, they're 18-13 when he plays, and they have a losing record when he doesn't play, 24-27. But obviously, the Clippers need a big game from Paul George, but he played very well against Minnesota, and they still lost. He had 25 of his 34 points in the second half, but what they really need is the rest of the team, the rest of the players to really step up. Reggie Jackson was kind of their go-to guy when Paul George's absence. They're going to need a better game from him. He was only 7 for 18 against Minnesota, 1 for 7 with 3 turnovers in the fourth quarter. So they really need more balance, and not just from Jackson. Other key players like Marcus Morris, Norman Powell. One indication is when they have balanced scoring, when 6 players score in double digits for the Clippers, they have a record of 28 on the season. So I think that's the key for them. Not to rely. George is obviously a huge boost, but they need a more rounded scoring from the team.
Yeah, getting George back was huge for them, but you noted that the Pelicans have beat the Clippers 3 times. They beat them 2 out of 3 with Paul George playing. So I know Paul George missed a lot of time, but it's not, he might not be the difference maker that we think. The other thing about George, and I got to read this stat line because I looked into this game, and if you watched it, he was all over the place for New Orleans. Herb Jones, he had 12 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 blocks, and 2 steals. And he's really more of a defensive player. So quite a stat line. He was matched up for most of the game against DeJounte Murray. Murray ended up with 16 points. So I'm not here to say that Herb Jones, who is a rookie, is going to shut down Paul George. But if the Clippers are running everything through Paul George, they could be in a lot of trouble if Jones is on his game. And that's why I think, again, the Pelicans probably feel pretty good about this matchup. A lot more depth, right?
Yeah, so that brings up, that's true. If If Jones holds George in check, that's where these other players are going to need to step up.
Yeah, if you look at second scorers, you mentioned Reggie Jackson didn't average 20 points this season. Brandon Ingram did. Pretty good second option. Valanciunas is a double-double machine. He averaged 17 points to go along with those rebounds. Again, I think if your stars cancel each other out or they battle each other to a draw, who's that second guy who's going to get points for you, right? McCollum, we know, is going to get points. I would imagine Paul George will get his, but who's that next guy up? And Brandon Ingram probably is the next best scorer who's going to be on that court.
I love it. I love what you guys are saying, because I'm looking at this matchup. I do believe the Clippers win, but I do believe the Pelicans cover for all the reasons that you're saying. You know, I'm with you. I think the addition of I teeter. I go back and forth. What was the best in-season acquisition? Was it CJ McCollum for the Pelicans, or was it Derek White for the Celtics, especially since Robert Williams more than likely is not going to play in the first few games for the Celtics? And so just each and every day, I teeter. I go back and forth. McCollum has just been unbelievable, averaging 26 points a game for the Pelicans since he joined that roster. You mentioned Ingram. He's been a complete beast, especially as aggressive he is when he gets in the paint and then he dishes out. You know, he put up 27 points against the Spurs. So I really like this Pelicans team. But guys, I'm going to tee up a guy for you, and I'm going to send it. I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. Norman Powell. He's been back for 2 games, and marinating this. He's put up 20 points. He's averaging 20 points in 20 minutes. Marinate that for a minute.
Maybe he'll be that second.
I think, I think, especially you're talking about the defensive matchup. If the Pelicans come in, they put their best defensive player on George. I think people are sleeping on Norman Powell. He's only been back 2 games. I know it's a small sample size, but the dude's great.
Yeah, and the other thing is, as good as Herb Jones is, and whether he locks up Paul George or not, you know, they had a 21-point lead in that game. It got down to 6 in the fourth quarter. So it's not like they're defensively a stalwart as a team. Letting that Spurs team back in who don't have a ton of firepower, that's probably a little worrying for New Orleans. So yeah, if Powell can bring those 20 points or so, this should be a tight one.
It will be fun.
You know what would be a lot of fun is if this game involved Zion Williamson and Kawhi Leonard. Can you imagine if those two were in this game? I don't think it would be a play-in situation, because I think they would have been better teams with those players on the court. But
Zion looked good doing 360 dunks. Keep your fingers crossed.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to wait till next year on that. Yeah. Same with Kawhi.
Hey, just want to remind folks again, please download the Elias Game Plan app. Let Elias be with you throughout the entire NBA postseason. Again, giving you all kinds of great Elias insight so that you're in the know and you can be a more savvy NBA post-game player and watcher throughout the playoffs. Guys, any final thoughts before we sign off?
I just think, the play-in tournament has been fantastic. It's brought some excitement to some of these teams that have kind of an outside chance looking in. So, this one and done thing, I think it's pretty exciting, and looking forward to seeing who wins on Friday.
Yeah, it's got a little bit of that March Madness feel, right? A one-game elimination gives a slight underdog a chance. I am pro play-in tournament. Yeah.
Fantastic. Guys, great job. Really appreciate you. Everybody, hopefully these Elias insights will set you up for a really exciting and lucrative Friday evening. Good luck.